Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, welcome back again to the show that never ends. It's your Pittsburgh Steelers show on the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, still kicking, Will Massasak, a.k.a. Bradshaw DeBen, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter, if you haven't blocked me already, which you probably will soon. This is really Pittsburgh versus all Yins night on the podcast. I know it is. And who better to join in that with me than some excellent cohorts, the best that I have managed to pay off. Starting at first base, starting it off from somewhere in Pittsburgh suburban zone 22, which may or may not be under several inches of snow. His name is Steel Perch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
I'm just TikTok dancing my way into your hearts.
You're dancing all over my logo. And also with us from somewhere in the greater Indianapolis area. Frankly, what's greater about Indianapolis? It's kind of hard to say. I'm not sure if Indianapolis got any snow in this storm. It's possible. But joining us from the greater Indianapolis area is Jeremy Coleman. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Doing good, and we did get snow here. We did get snow, so
nice. I should have said from the state where their football team apparently doesn't exist, Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're getting blindsided a little bit.
If ever there was a year for an expanded college football playoff where there's all these teams that have played different amounts of games and you don't know anything's really settled before they get to the playoff, wouldn't it have been a perfect year to have God forbid, a 16-team playoff where, pretty much everybody who's off to a good start gets a chance to get in the playoff and lose to Ohio State or Alabama, or Clemson or Notre Dame. Anyway, also with us, I've taken a long time to get to him tonight, so hopefully he's hanging in there with us. He hasn't abandoned us, which he rightfully should have long ago. From the very cold reaches of South Carolina, his name is Dom. He goes by FC. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Fucking humbug.
Now, you were in a pretty good mood a minute ago when I talked to you. Now you're the Grinch.
No, I have flashbacks to the Buffalo Bills game. So yeah, not too nice.
Yeah, not the best effort or outcome for the Buffalo game. I'm going to start with you, Perch. What was your takeaway from the Buffalo-Pittsburgh game that we're forced to actually talk about and think about again, which I would rather never think about it again. But here we are on the show. Tell me about your thoughts of the Buffalo Steelers game, the loss on Sunday.
Us sucking. End of story, right? I mean, the first half, the defense did everything you could possibly hope to do. You turned over, you got an interception early in the game. You couldn't turn that into any points. We go 1, 2, 3, 4 drives in a row with nothing but punts. Finally, they get the offense going, get a touchdown, basically have a chance to kind of run out that the first half, but they keep sticking to that, that short, quick passing game. And eventually, if you throw the ball 50 times a game, eventually somebody's going to jump a route or a ball's going to get tipped and it's going to get picked and it's going to lead to a huge momentum swing. That's the first pick six that Ben's thrown in I don't know how many years, but that was just a massive, massive swing in that game. Then they're coming out of the half and letting them go 8 plays, 68 yards in 4.5 minutes on just a long extended drive with our offense looking like mud up to that point in the game, aside from the one touchdown drive. It's just such a huge swing from really being up 7-0. Now you're down, 16-7 with the offense having the issues that it has and all the players that they were down. It just, 2 brand new inside linebackers, not having your top corner. And once, the Bills kind of figured out in that second half that, hey, we can eat up their zone, it was kind of over at that point. And the Bills offense got on track and the Steelers offense never really did. And, it was what it was. A lot of things were to blame. I think injuries were certainly a part of it, but man, the offense really needs a major overhaul. And
Sure.
I'm sure we'll talk about that at length.
We'll get to them. FC, I mean, partially, right? It's just hard to win all your games in the NFL. But it did seem like it was a little bit of a perfect storm. The Steelers were forced to play zone because you don't want Josh Allen to run all over you. But if you do that against a pretty good team, you're going to give up some yards and some points. How did you see the Steelers' defense and the adjustments that Buffalo made to it in the about halftime?
The tale of two halves. The Steelers, I believe, blitzed the Bills 70% of the time. They were very successful with it in the first half, and in the second half, Diggs made several plays, if we're going to be honest. And, Cole Beasley chipped in. Doug Gabriel made a play or two. You live by the blitz, you die by the blitz. Cam Hayward played a fantastic game. Marcus Allen, for being limited, I thought played well. I want to know where that defensive MVP was in that game, because Darrell Williams more than handled T.J. Watt. That's an issue. They were missing Joe Hayden, which forced Cam Sutton into a starting role, and Cam Sutton was fine, he was solid, but it's just one less guy. They really missed Spillane and Vince Williams. Don't let anybody kid you. And the defense, I was not too pissed off about, but I wasn't too happy with either. But I can understand with the amount of injuries, and the effort was there. It was just execution by the Bills and the Steelers' lack of execution of the defense, lack of pass rush at critical times without blitzing our tails off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also add to that list, Mike Hilton, I thought, had another really strong game. Pretty much that, in that first half, he was keeping the Steelers in it, I think. And to your point, I'll throw it to you, Jeremy. I would say for the first time in TJ Watt's career, at least since he's emerged as a real playmaker for the Steelers, that it looked like either he was sort of fighting a little bit of injury or something was bothering him, or he basically got worn out from not having success in the pass rush early in the game. And by the time the second half rolled in, about halfway through the second half, it looked like he wasn't even giving full out effort on plays. That it's so unusual to see him playing like that. I don't know if that was something that you noticed.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to the thing that I was going to really say, what really stood out to me about the Steelers defense is they finally looked like fatigued out there, and it's because of the lack of depth that they enjoyed so much earlier in the season. Being down a Bud Dupree, now Alex Highsmith is starting. So there's one less guy to give TJ Watt that blow every now and then. Ola Adeniyi saw a lot more time, as an effort to keep TJ Watt fresh. I don't think we saw Jaron Elliott out there. I know he's on the active squad now, but that's one less guy to give TJ Watt that critical blow. I just feel like that was kind of the case across the whole defense. It seemed like we were really tired out there for a change, and part of that was because Buffalo kept putting the drives together. We couldn't get off the field. Like Perch said, they were just eating up that zone all day long. I think fatigue played a major part in the defense giving up 29 points.
Perch, one last question on the defensive side, and that is, would you ever believe such an improvement for Josh Allen over last year to this year? He looks like a completely different player. I thought he played great in this game, especially for the second half of the game.
He also had 2 picks and a fumble. And he couldn't do shit in the first half. To me, it was more about, I don't know. I think he's definitely improved it definitely this year. I think he's a lot better player than what I thought he was previous years, but I was not overly impressed this game. What was he? A little bit over 50% completions, a couple of turnovers, that one fumble that should have been called that they didn't call, where he got his hand knocked out with was an empty hand. But yeah, he played pretty well in the second half. But when they were bringing out the whole day, how many drives did he have in the first half? Did absolutely nothing. He had 2 good drives in the second half. I'll give him that.
The thing is, he's playing a great defense. All I'm saying is that he made the plays. That thing that I think really separates great quarterbacks, which is you're playing a great defense in a game where you need to make some plays and figure out a way to get it done, even when it's not easy, when you don't have your best day or whatever. And I think he more than showed that. He made the plays that he needed to make to keep third downs going and to put the ball in the end zone. That was
your
my
opponent scores 15 points. You ain't got to make that many plays, buddy.
True. Although getting more than 15 against the Steelers defense is not easy either. FC, what were you trying to say there?
That he's not a top 10 quarterback, and I think Baker Mayfield over him. But that's just.
See, now Baker Mayfield, there's a guy that, by the way, has.
I don't think Baker Mayfield is barely a top 10 quarterback. If he is a top 10 quarterback, I would say Allen's probably in the 12 to 15 range.
I just think
Allen's way better than Mayfield, if you ask me. And I'm not a huge Josh Allen fan. I think Josh Allen's way better.
I really don't.
Yeah, I think about Baker is so much worse under pressure. That's the thing that's really both physical pressure and also mental pressure. I thought Baker, for instance, played pretty well the other night against Baltimore, but it's like there's just something about his game. He's when it's going his way, he can play all right, and then if the tide turns, sometimes he makes some bad mistakes.
Baker played well when he could target the fifth string cornerback and a safety playing cornerback when Baltimore was completely depleted in the secondary. That's all he did, right? I mean, they had 5 rushing touchdowns that game. He had a couple of nice passes, but he was throwing basically at the same couple guys. He wasn't, really challenging that defense that much.
By the way, Baker Mayfield, I believe 4 of his top 6 passing performances ever are against the Ravens. And of those 6 top passing performances, he has 4 losses in there. So, take that for whatever it's worth. Anyway, enough about Baker Mayfield. Let's talk about the Steelers offense. We're contractually obligated to talk about them. I'll start with you, Jeremy. It's like, are you going to pull some? I mean, to me, there was a couple of positive adjustments, but as I always like to say, the Steelers change at the pace of like an oil tanker trying to turn around at sea. So it could be like a whole year or two as they maneuver their 180. But I did see some more snaps under center, and I did see a hint of some action going on in the intermediate game. Did you see baby steps there, or do you think it's just they should just scrap the whole thing and start over again?
I don't think they have to scrap the whole thing. I think what you said, I think we saw baby steps. It did seem like the running game had a little bit of traction. That's all I'm going to really give them credit for. I don't think it took off or anything. Saw some positive notes there. We're able to actually block some runs. It is what it is. What still gets me, though, is it seems like there's just no lack of urgency until they absolutely need it on offense. As soon as they went down 2 touchdowns, boy, they responded real quick with a touchdown drive. But let's not start out the game that way. Let's not start trying to, be aggressive and get the ball into our playmakers' hands right away. I mean, that's the most infuriating part of it to me. It seemed like one drive they were able to turn it on, and I said, they might be able to come back and make this a game. And then it was like, well, that was short-lived.
Yeah. Well, FC, you got the James Conner situation. It's like I want to support the guy. I think he's a good teammate. And there are some things he does really well. I've been actually throughout the course of his career really impressed, especially from year 1 to year 2, the improvements that he made as a pass protector and actually his feel for the timing in the pass game as a running back, when he's tasked with, you stay in, but if the guy doesn't come, you go out. His timing with that, and he looks quickly for the ball. He does a really good job with that. But this availability issue with his, just being so easily banged up and not dependable to be able to, know that you're going to have his availability. I mean, at this point, does that just trump everything else about him and you just can't count on him being your starter?
Yes. I'm going to throw a question back at you. Who do you think the best Steelers running back of all time is?
I never really saw John Henry Johnson play, but I will take Franco Harris.
I don't think Franco Harris could rush for more yards than James Conner is getting behind this offensive line. And that's the Steelers' problem. Whenever you say an offense lacks an identity, it's keywords for their offensive line is playing shitty. So as long as the Steelers' offensive line continues to be pathetic, terrible, just puke, then the offense is going to continue to be pathetic, slow, and puke. I hate to say it, it's that simple. The Steelers' offensive problems lie with the five guys up front. They can't reestablish the line of scrimmage. They can't run block. And I have a pretty good feeling that the reason that we're seeing the ball ripping out of Ben's hands so fast is a lot of those are business decisions made by Ben, where he doesn't trust the offensive line to hold up. And the ball is getting in, the ball is getting out, because games really don't matter until January. And I really believe that right now. I think that's the biggest problem with the Steelers' offense is the offensive line is terrible. Every single one of them, terrible.
Yeah, it may have been that he got injured in Dallas. It also could just be that in Dallas he was like, wait a minute, why am I risking my knees for games that don't really make that much difference at this point? We can coast into the playoffs. Like, I sort of get that. Because if Ben gets hurt and is knocked out, then the season's over anyway, right? Perch, I was reminded in not only what FC just said, but also listening to the great pundit of football, Chris Collinsworth, talking about the Steelers blocking, or actually I think it was Daryl Johnson, the other great pundit of football, talking about the Steelers O-line with their pity-pat footwork style. But I was reminded of something you said on this show a long time ago when we were debating Max Starks and whether Max Starks was a good offensive tackler or not. And my point was Max Starks would be a guy who gets the job done in the run game, but he isn't really a dominating run blocker. And you said something like, he is not going to drive anybody off the ball, but can he wall off a defender from the backside or something? Sure, that's what he could do. I feel like our offensive line right now is essentially five guys who are interested in walling off the defense on running plays rather than really pushing them anywhere. And okay, that maybe works if you've got a guy who can, run the stretch play and put one foot in the ground and just burst through a hole. But the Steelers don't really have a guy like that. Do you see this offensive line, as FC just said and I just said, being more capable of like walling guys off? And how, who do we have that can run behind that?
No, I think that the major issue, and we talked about this a bit last week, most of the run plays are like run pass options, or they're coming out of the shotgun. The offensive line doesn't know if they're run blocking or pass blocking. How often are they ever just lining up and blasting off the line? It's a coaching and a scheme thing. I don't think that those five guys who are out there, I mean, Dotson, you saw him in call. What's his MO? That's a nasty freaking mauling hombre. And he's not getting the opportunity to do it when he's in the game. We know how good DeCastro is. I think he may be a little bit injured this year, but even down at the goal line, like I said the week prior, he was getting pushed over his side. But then Ebron's getting blown up, and there's one. All it takes is one guy to penetrate through. Your tight end can't block for shit. Yeah. They were trying to pull a left guard who's really a right tackle instead of the other way around. They were playing, a undrafted free agent rookie center in the previous game. So there's been a lot of issues there, but they're not ever just going into a game. They spent almost $4 million of their salary cap on Derek Watt to play fullback. How many snaps did he get last game? I think it was less than one. So we'll call it zero. So he didn't even play. I mean, they're not using a fullback. They're not just lining up and playing power. It's all everything out of the shotgun, run pass option. Those offensive linemen are made to be passive. So we can sit here and drag those guys through the mud all we want, but they're not really being put in a position to succeed. That comes back to coaching. And even when Tomlin was asked, hey, are you going to throw the ball downfield or are you going to establish the run? And he's like, well, we have to make first downs first. Like, yeah, you know what? Let me throw the ball 3 yards at a time, and if we make 2 or 3 first downs, then we're going to take a shot, and then we're going to run the ball. That's bullshit. It really comes down to scripted plays and what your offensive coordinator is paid for. How many touchdowns do the Steelers have on the first drive of a game in the last 2.5 years? I believe their answer is 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so Fichtner's had the opportunity to script the first drive, to put something in that he hasn't put on film before, to put some wrinkles in, to attack the weakness of a defense, to accentuate the positives of his offense in that first drive. And it never worked. I mean, it's probably out half the time, maybe 1 first down, then a punt, almost every time for 2 or 3 years. The offense, the coordinator is bad. Okay, they're not. I'm not going to sit here and just rag the offensive linemen when I think they're being put in a position to fail.
Right, but you asked the question. How often are they just lining up and running it? 10 snaps in the Buffalo game with Ben under center. If I believe I have my numbers correctly, I think they had 3 completions to Juju that were all pretty good. One of them was 20-some yarder on play action. And they had, I think, 7 runs, averaging 2.75 yards a carry. So all I'll say I'm not going to disagree with what you said because I think there's merit to it. But even when they just lined up and they're going to run it, and whatever, they're still handing off to guys who are, there's a hole there that's worth 3 or 4 yards, and or maybe 1 yard, and they're averaging 2.75. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're not.
I think
turning those holes into 5.
It's the worst running back crew in the league. I mean, it's just awful. James Conner, bless him, his best football days were left on the field at Pitt. He came back and had a little resurgence a year and a half, maybe 2 years in the pros, but he's toast. Benny Snell's slow as shit. Jalen Samuels isn't even a high school or college running back, and they got him as their third back. So it's a mess.
Yeah, I think you might actually see some more Jalen Samuels this week especially if Connor's injury lingers. So Jeremy, we've beaten this horse pretty dead on the show, but they're gonna have to. They're not going to be a dominating run team this year. I mean, I think that ship has sailed. But what? I guess the question I'll ask is, how good do they have to be running it for you to feel like their chances of actually winning important games in January and or February are going to be?
They just have to be more efficient with it. They need to be. They could run it 12 times a game, but to me, as long as they're averaging somewhere between 3.5 to 4 yards a carry, the running game has to at least chip in with, I feel like, at least 75 solid yards a game. At least there's a threat that they might run the ball. Like you said, there was one big explosive play to Juju, but it was with Ben under center and a threat of a running game off of it. The threat of a running game can just open up the passing game even more. So like you said, I think that was on a play action pass. I didn't know that existed in the Pittsburgh offensive scheme, to be honest. They even made a point of it in the game. The announcers made a point of it in the game, I think, to point out the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers run almost no play action.
Right.
I mean, it can just be such a huge thing for an offense. And a lot of teams use play action to generate big plays, to get people into mismatches, to get people a foot or so late. I feel like when we stay in shotgun, no one is a step behind unless we win our one-on-one matchup. It's not schemed to get a guy open.
Yeah,
it's
or a
hope
fake.
we get him open.
Basically, it's either a pump fake or somebody falls down. That's how you get a guy wide open from there.
Right. There's just no. We've got to start putting defenses in a disadvantaged position, and we just aren't doing that when we're dropping back 50 times a game because they can just sit and drive on the ball all day long. Get them backpedaling, for the love of God.
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's 50 attempts passing, and then there's 50 attempts passing. That there's 50 where 40 of them are within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. Not a good plan.
Right.
Perch, Ben came out this week and denied the reports that he is injured, that there's something actually physically wrong with him. I would, I guess I'd say I don't really believe Ben when it comes to reporting his injuries. And I mean that less about him being a diva, but more about like him saying a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when he was icing his elbow, there was nothing really wrong with it. Where do you come down on this? Do you think, when you watch him, do you think there's something with his lower body that's not working right, or do you see something else?
I mean, I think that his knees bother him. I think that his knees have bothered him for a long time. Do I think it's affecting his play? No, I really don't. I think there was a play like 2 weeks ago where he was dead to rights, ready to be sacked, and a guy was flying right at him, and Ben did this quick little pirouette, took 2 little steps and chucked the ball downfield. He's still got really good foot quickness when he needs to. If he needs to move 2 or 3 feet to the side or spin or twist his body in some sort of way, he could do it. I don't see him, gimping when he walks or lumbering in any major way the few times a game he has to run. But I almost think it's more of a protection thing, and I don't know, it's just me guessing, but is it him trying to protect himself, or is it an organizational thing? I think that's probably the biggest problem with the offense is the organization said, we have a 38-year-old quarterback coming off of an elbow injury. We're not going to let him take a 7-step drop. We're not going to roll him out. We're going to coach him to not hold that ball, to just get rid of it in 2 seconds. And it just completely zaps anything that they could do. I mean, they're so limited on offense because they're babying the guy. To me, like I said, let him go out on his sword. If he's going to take a career-ending injury, let him play the way he plays. Okay, we'll deal with it. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. But handcuffing the offense the way that they have this year, you can't go on like that. To me, it's, let the guy play, give him the full playbook, put him under center, use the play action, let him roll out, let him hold the ball, let him get sacked a little bit. And if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. He's old. It's going to happen sooner or later anyway. But you can't just live in your fears, to use a Tomlinism. Right now, they're coaching and living in their fears with that.
Well, I mean, I like to point out that it's just a continuation of what they started in 2012. I mean, this is not all that different from the 2012-2013 Steelers offense, where Ben had the lowest yards per attempt of his career, and they were doing all these bubble screens. It was driving everybody crazy about how many bubble screens, and they took away the intermediate passing of Ben's game and so on and so forth. And I think that was the thing in 2012 is that they decided they didn't want him to get sacked anymore, get hit anymore, and they were going to change the style of play. So I guess we're just, this is the logical conclusion of that. Now that he's 38, they're really not interested in risking him, especially during the regular season. But I don't know, FC, let me ask you this. Do you think that there's any sense that they're holding back what their offense is doing during the regular season, and they're, especially this last few weeks, and that they're basically going to let Ben be men more once we get to the postseason?
That's my hope. I'm not certain of it. I also agree. I agree with most of Birch's point where I don't think Ben. I think Ben's not stepping in the throws because a lot of times he's going to get absolutely destroyed and demolished as the interior offensive lineman get walked into his lap. This Chuck O'Keefer, whiffs, and pass pro, and he's going to get just destroyed. So throwing off his back foot, he can throw the fadeaway, pass, which, Claypool gets cut off or Juju gets cut off. He isn't stepping in the throws. He isn't finishing the throw because, he's stepping up into the rush. And that's not for the best, especially whenever the Steelers win against Cincinnati this week. Let's say they win ugly. They locked down the AFC North, correct?
Absolutely.
So, you're then guaranteed no worse than a 2 seed, which means no bye week, but,
Well, they can still get the 4, unfortunately, if they win against Cincinnati and lose the last 2, pretty good chance they're the 4 seed, which is a bit different than playing. Like, to me, 2 or 3 seed, I don't think it matters this year very much at all. The 4 seed, that's a big deal to me. But anyway, I'm nitpicking the point. But since you started us down that path, FC, let's talk a little bit about this matchup against Cincinnati. Yes, the Steelers basically just need to beat Cincinnati. They win the division. They're going to have a home game to start with in the playoffs. it's like, is it wrong to think of this game, FC, as a game to almost like an exhibition game where you're trying to work stuff out? Because we're pretty much in agreement, right? That Cincinnati is not even like at the Washington football team or New York Giants or Philadelphia Eagles level in terms of being able to compete right now.
Defensively, I think this is a game where you work on your basics. You don't show blitz. You work on your coverage. You mix your coverage schemes. You work on fundamentals. Offensively, this is where you begin showing your identity. And I believe that identity has to start with the offensive line. The offensive line can only have success with good play calling. Where I completely agree with another point that both Perch and Jeremy made, where it's the coordinator's job to put players in position to be successful. You have an experienced quarterback. If you have more than 8 in the box, you throw the ball. If you have less than 8 in the box, you run the ball, unless it's third down and 9. You go back to basics, and you just fundamentally play smart football. How many times, we say how many times the Steelers have been on the shotgun. I wonder how many times they've been out of the pistol. Remember that pistol formation, how much Ben liked it? Yep. I don't remember seeing too much pistol this year.
Very few. A couple times, but very few. Yeah, that seems like just in general, it just seems like a week where if you got anything to work on, you have the extra day during the week, and then you have maybe a chance to, to put some, install some stuff for this game that can take you somewhere later. But Perch, Fichtner was, in his, I don't put too much faith in any of these Zoom calls or press conferences with the Steelers. They don't really reveal a whole lot of stuff, but he mentioned something about working on the deep game today in practice. But I just like to point out that Ben Roethlisberger did not practice today. So if you're working on the deep game, you're just working on the guys catching the deep ball. Maybe they think that the catching of the deep ball is more of a problem. And maybe I'm even inclined to agree with them. What's your take on new stuff, practicing the deep ball without Ben, all that?
Yeah, I had a spy down there. They put all the receivers 6 yards away from Mason Rudolph and called that the deep game.
Well, for Mason Rudolph, it might be.
Yeah, Mason Rudolph, 6-yard pass, deep pass. Fichtner was a little bit nervous, but he agreed to do it.
He also,
in all seriousness, though, the intermediate game has been, us guys have watched every snap of the guy's career, every throw he's ever made. I think all 4 of us would probably agree that any part of Ben's game that was the greatest is probably his intermediate passing, that I would put him up there with top 5 quarterbacks in the history of the game. It's where he's made his bones. It's completely out of the game. It's short. Let's take a deep one. And the intermediate game is freaking gone. That's what they need to bring back. And there's even been some plays where Ben, Ebron last game twice was streaking open. And the defensive backs and the linebackers were jumping the under routes. And the intermediate routes were open. And he was just so conditioned to get that thing out that, I don't know what the hell. I think part of it is Ben's mindset now that he's just so sold on getting that thing out quick, and that's the offense, and that's what I'm going to do. They've got to get the intermediate passing back. I care less about the deep ball. It'll come if you can mix in a couple of game. It's never going to be, a core part of your offense relying on 30, 40, 50-yard chunk plays. But if you can get that 10, 15, 20-yard intermediate plays in there, it'll help the offense a lot. It's just, like I said, it's just gone.
That's a big deal. It flips field position. And, they've actually used the intermediate game, weirdly enough, just like into the red zone or just before they get into the red zone. They've been totally down with throwing these seam balls, in tight windows and stuff that they haven't, deep corner route, like stuff that they won't do at all anyplace else on the field. And suddenly they get to the 25-yard line and they're winging it, So it's not like they can't do it. It's clearly like a mindset that they either do not want Ben doing it, or Ben doesn't want to do it, or they're worried about, the line or whatever. So it's very strange. So Jeremy, where does that leave us? We don't want to put it all on our offensive line, but they haven't really been getting push in the run game, and they've been, a little sloppy in the pass game as well. We don't want to put it all on the offensive coordinator, but he's been a problem. We don't want to put it all on the quarterback, but he's got things that he's either unwilling to do or can't do right now. The receivers, have not done a great job catching the football. Obviously, that's 3 games is more than a trend. It's not an accident anymore. So where does that leave this offense, even playing a team as defensively challenged as the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, unfortunately, we just don't have answers to those questions right now. It's infuriating just because you're hoping this team gets going back in the right direction again. I was telling some friends who were ragging on me, the Steelers have lost 2 in a row now. I'm glad they're stumbling now rather than getting into the playoffs and finding out these problems right away. Like, we have time to work on it. I don't know how confident I am we're going to solve some of these things. Like, I don't think the running game is going to get solved this year. I think that's going to take a draft pick and several draft picks, really, offensive line, running back, to really kind of reinvent the running game in Pittsburgh. We just have to find some confidence again. I think the phrase winning cures all gets thrown around a lot. When we're winning, everything looks great. We're looking through rose-colored glasses. Coming off 2 losses where we haven't looked very impressive, everything looks doom and gloom. I think they can flip the script, but they just have to get aggressive again. That they have to play with a sense of urgency, and that I really think that's the thing that's going to propel this team to a deep playoff run if they want to get there. They have to find a sense of urgency. Right now, it just seems like they're too content to, we'll try a few things here, see if this works out. But they really need to pick up the sense of urgency, or else this team's going to be one and done in the playoffs.
So, Perch, famous sports axiom, you're never as good as you are in the middle of a winning streak, and you're never as bad as you are in the middle of a losing streak. Where do you figure the actual identity of this team is? And I mean, not about style of play, but in terms of how good they are. Yes, they're not an undefeated team, and yes, they're not a team that hasn't won any games. Do you think, compared to the competition in the NFL, as they stand right now, without knowing anything about what they're going to do to get better on offense or get worse on defense, is this like a top 5 team in the NFL right now?
No chance. I mean, you can't throw out the whole year, because losing 2 of their 4 starting linebackers was huge, and especially Dupree having that second legitimate pass rusher, that really hurt. And then, those couple of short weeks they had, and then all the COVID stuff and the injuries, they were in a bad spot the last couple of weeks. Every team's going to have a little slump or a bad game throughout the season. But looking where they are, how do you turn this offense around? I mean, early in the year, they were doing some of the jet sweeps and a lot of motion, and they got the run game up to the respectable level that we begged for it to be at the last couple of years. And that lasted about 6 games. And then that went away, and they fell in love with this short passing game. It was really effective for another 3 or 4 games that they were able to score and move the ball whenever Ben just kind of went, on his own and kind of called the plays. And then Baltimore kind of figured that out. And Tennessee in the second half of that game kind of clamped it down. And we saw Dallas kind of hold it down. And we saw Buffalo hold it down. And now you went from averaging 26 points a game to 18 a game, or whatever they're at now. What's the fix? You can't rely on the run game. Your running backs suck. Your offensive line's beat up. Do you go and completely remake the offense and start attacking deep? Do you rely on that short passing game to miraculously just – it seems like the coach is like, well, we're a short passing team. That's what we're going to keep doing. I don't see a fix for the offense. I think the defense is still good enough to keep them in any game. I just don't see – I think it's a – they could probably win a playoff game is kind of what I see. So outside the top 5 or 6 teams, they're somewhere between, 7 and 12. And I just, I can't see it right now how they're going to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, winning a playoff game still puts you, somewhere like in the top 7, right? So there's only going to be, after the first round, there's only going to be 8 teams left. Yeah, okay, so 7 to 12, that works. I don't know, FC. I'm like, maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic than Perch. I don't think it's just that they're dysfunctional and getting worse and everything else. Are you with me? I think maybe this team just they almost needed to lose a couple of games just to get this stretch over with and kind of get back to a normal week. How much has this disruption affected their ability to play football, do you think?
4 games in, 21 days or 22 days. It was something crazy. I know they played just a ridiculous amount of games. I think there's no cure-all for this offense. I think the way that you can maybe win, steal some games, get the train on the right track is I go to Ben and I tell him, I believe I said this last week, give me 25 or 30 plays you love for this week. You look at the film, you know what we're based on defense, give me 25 or 30 plays you love. I put in 2 or 3 trickeration plays. People like to badmouth and gimmick offense. Hey, if it gets you field position, if it leads to scores, beautiful. I think that you're going to have to change formation, and I believe that you're going to have better usage of personnel. I don't care if we have to alternate Chase Claypool and James Washington every play. I'm going to take the top off of the defenses every single play. Those cornerbacks that are facing my wide receivers are going to be dead tired. I put Ray McLeod out there and have him run straight 9-outs and pull a defensive back, make a safety chase. You have to tire defenses out. You have to make defenses thick. You got to have some play action passing. You got to pass out of different formations, hence the pistol, 2 tight ends. You have to take Eric Ebron off the field if you want to run the ball successfully, and that means Vance McDonald.
Yeah, I mean, even Vance McDonald's been kind of invisible. I mean, Perch has been calling for him to get involved in the passing game for a while now, but, other than a tight end screen that was totally telegraphed and blown up.
That's how bad Eric Ebron is.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. A side question for you, Perch. Do you think there's any chance Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald are on this team next year? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, somebody's got to play tight end, and boy, they're going to have I don't even want to think about the end of the year. The salary cap is going to be a major issue. They've got a ton of basically the whole offensive lines of free agents. Both, nickel or slot corners are free agents. Bud Dupree, Juju. I mean, there's just so many issues. They need a tight end, but I mean, to draft one who's going to start, you probably got to go in the first 2 rounds. They need running backs. Like I said, this is probably our last best chance to win a Super Bowl with Ben. And it's going to be a messy offseason.
Yeah, well, enough about the offseason, but Perch, I'll go back to you just real quickly. Chase Claypool hasn't played that much in the last couple of weeks. I think he had his 2 lowest snap numbers in months, somewhere in the sort of 40 snaps range, which is maybe a little less than half the snaps, I think, last week. Do you think this is some sort of they're unhappy with him a little bit and it's a message to him, or they saw him get sort of outworked physically a little bit and they want to see another guy, get more James Washington? How do you account for this when the offense is struggling and Chase Claypool isn't playing as much as some other guys?
I just think he doesn't really fit the offense they're trying to run. I mean, why would you want a big, fast guy who takes the top off of the defense when all you run is 3-yard routes? I mean, what the hell's the point? That's how I look at it is, give us the short little quick guys who can get open within 2 seconds because we're not throwing it deep anyway. They're completely misusing the guy. Same with James Washington. They'll get the 1 or 2 plays a game that they'll throw it down the field. But the offense is so chicken shit bullshit. Tired of watching it, tired of talking about it. They need to fix it. But when you listen to the interviews with Tomlin and Fichtner, they just think they need to convert more, get more first downs. It's the Dick LeBeau defensive philosophy in reverse, where take away the deep ball, take away the run, make them be absolutely perfect the whole way down the field. And if they are, we're going to hold them to a field goal. That's basically what the goal of our offense is now. Just dink and dunk and move it 3 yards at a time, and you got to be perfect to score any points. It's madness.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jeremy. I'm going to give you the last word on this matchup. We haven't really talked that much about Cincinnati. What's the latest with them? I know that Geno Atkins is not going to play in this game, and of course Joe Burrow's long gone. It seems like there's been sort of a resurgence of AJ Green, which is crazy how disappeared he's been. He's sort of, I guess gone over the edge to the end of his career, maybe. Just give us the last word on this matchup with Cincinnati and what you think they can or can't do against the Steelers right now.
Well, Brandon Allen will be starting at quarterback again this week. He doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in the passing game. I thought T. Higgins was having a really nice season for Cincinnati when Joe Burrow was there. Hasn't been able to produce at the same level now that there's been a dip down at quarterback with Brandon Allen there. No Joe Mixon again. It's Gio Bernard, another guy we're familiar with. We've seen him a lot these past few years, playing in relief for Mixon in some cases. Like you said, A.J. Green has found a way to produce here in the last few weeks. And talk about a guy who I had written off at the beginning of the season, didn't look like he was even interested in playing in the NFL to begin the year. They don't really have anyone at tight end. Drew Sample's a nice blocker, gets open occasionally. We've kind of rounded out their offense. Defense, they're just young. William Jackson is one good quality corner they have. Mackenzie Alexander's been okay here and there, but this should be a game Pittsburgh should win decisively. Should being the operative keyword.
Yeah. And actually, FC I lied. I'm going to give you the last word. Is this the game that the Steelers have to win decisively to feel good about themselves? Is there a scenario in your mind where they play well? They win by 10 points. It isn't like a big blowout. Is that not good enough for what they need right now?
It depends on what they accomplish offensively. If they win, let's say 17-0, but we control the game with the run game. We get the run game established. No injuries. They'll take the win. Be happy. It's a win. It's a professional league. You just got to hang the wins. Make the playoffs. Check. Win the division. Check. Those are two of the goals that you probably had coming into the season that you can accomplish with a win.
That's a good last word on that subject. And I think with that, we're going to get back a little bit later to our predictions for the Steelers-Bengals game and our predicted scores. But first, it's time for the illustrious pick segment brought to us by
Sports and Shit. Go to sportsandshit.com to find what you're looking for. It's also brought to us by, we're going to skip the NFL referees, by Anthony Bugger McFarland, who had the nutsack to call the entire unit soft. Called Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line soft.
Well, it sounds like you're not that far away from him. You don't think they're playing very well right now, but you don't think they're soft.
The difference between me as a Pittsburgh Steelers diehard fan calling them soft and that piece of shit that had Alan Fanica's foot drove so far up his ass as the Steelers rushed for 250 plus yards against that overrated garbage fucking defense they had. There's a big difference. It's like me making fun of my retarded nephew. I can do it. Anybody else makes fun of my retarded nephew, we're going to fuck them up. It's just, I'm allowed to badmouth the Steelers. You're allowed to badmouth them. Ravens fan is not.
Perch is once again going to chastise us for being too much swearing on the show. It's coming.
Oh, I thought it was going to be about the retard.
Well, that too. But
you guys know I'm completely politically correct. I will never say anything offensive to anybody, so I'm deeply offended by this program.
Hey, it's our Beano Cook. When Beano was on ESPN back in the day, some things were said, and you're just like, yeah, that's Beano. All right, well, it's not Jimmy the Greek. Speaking of Jimmy the Greek, maybe we should talk about some point spreads and pick a couple of games. There's almost nothing really interesting on this schedule. There's one game this week between two winning teams, so I guess let's start with that. That'd be your Kansas City Chiefs, a 3-point favorite at the New Orleans Saints. I'll start with you, Jeremy. I personally cannot believe that Drew Brees is ever going to play football again. He must really want the chance to go out a winner because his injuries were crazy, man. But he is practicing this week, and he may or may not play in this game. What's your take on Kansas City at New Orleans?
Well, I do think the Saints have a better chance of winning. I think if Drew Brees is back there, I think that the Taysom Hill offense, had success initially, but I think good teams have started to kind of figure that out. The Kansas City Chiefs has actually played pretty decent defense here over the last month. I'm going to take the Chiefs. The Chiefs just have the better offense at this point. I think if Taysom Hill plays the majority of snaps, I think they are going to have a game plan to kind of neutralize him. If Drew Brees does suit up, man, I really hope he doesn't get hit again like that, because I thought he was done when he broke 11 ribs, right? I mean, that's insane that
that's
already
like Joe Theismann's leg, man.
At some point it's like, do you value your personal health at all? Do you want to see your next birthday?
Yeah, I guess. Perch, how about you? How do you see this game?
Chiefs in a blowout. If Drew Brees plays, I don't think he's going to. They already said that they're going to hold him out until he's completely healthy. But even if he plays, they're not going to win. So I'm going to take the Chiefs to win, take the over, and Chiefs cover.
FC, how about you?
Call it a hunch. Chiefs have not been really good the last 3 weeks. Mahomes, 3 turnovers against the Dolphins. Probably could have lost that game. I cannot take the Saints because I don't think the Saints have the defensive components to stop Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. So that's the reason I'm going to take the Chiefs. But I do not see the Chiefs as the mighty Goliath that a lot of people do.
Yeah, they've had some sort of under the radar struggles this year. A lot of close games. A lot of this is their MO the last couple of years. They get behind and then they turn it on, and it's the greatest show on turf, and they come back and they win, and everybody thinks that's great. But it's the kind of thing that that's really great, and as long as you're winning, and until one time it isn't enough, and you don't come back and you get stuck, right? I'm not really convinced that New Orleans has the team to really match up with the Chiefs. But one thing I will say about your hunch is it is a game that Kansas City could lose and not really affect their playoff chances as far as the number 1 seed. The only thing it does for the Steelers if the Chiefs lose this week is, let's say next week Patrick Mahomes ends up on the COVID list and he doesn't play against Atlanta and they lose to Atlanta. Sure. Well, then it matters, But I kind of agree with the sense of everything here. I don't know that Kansas City their defense is, enough to really keep New Orleans down and keep Alvin Kamara down, for instance. But I do think Kansas City will win, and they probably will win by that 3 points. So I'll go with the Chiefs. That was a long-winded way of saying all of that. Just a couple of quickies. I'll just ask you this question. Who has a better chance of being upset this week? Buffalo, a 6-point favorite at Denver, or Cleveland, a 6-point favorite at the New York Giants? I'll start with UFC.
Those are 2 games that, man, Daniel Jones sucks. If Colt McCoy was starting for the Giants, I would not be shocked if the Giants beat him. And I said week 1 that Giants front 7 is a lot better than people are giving them credit for.
Sure.
And people are starting to come around and see it. They are physical, they are massive, and they can run. That being said, I actually put a little money on the Denver Broncos on the money line. Very little bit of money, $20. I just have a feeling about Denver. Their defense on paper looks terrible. But somehow, some way, Vic Fangio is getting a lot out of them. And I think that Drew Lock is going to have a good enough game. And I think that the high altitude and high spirits of the Buffalo Bills are going to come back and chase them. So actually, it's Broncos in the points.
Perch, how about you?
Yeah, I'll echo FC on the Giants defense. They've been playing really well this year. Even early in the year when the Steelers played, I'm like, boy, this defense is, a little bit better than they look on paper. Daniel Jones makes a lot of play. I think he'd be the leading rusher if he was on the Steelers, but he makes enough plays with his legs that the Giants can, then they just beat Seattle a couple weeks back. So I still think Cleveland's overrated. I think that if the Giants defense can hold down Cleveland's running game, all bets are off. So if I had to pick one upset there, I would definitely take the Giants game.
How about you, Jeremy?
Well, I'm going to take the Giants, but for a different reason. So Jason Garrett is on the COVID list, and he will not be coaching this week. So who gets the play calling duties? That's right, ex-Cleveland Brown head coach Freddie Kitchens. He's the tight ends coach there. He is going to be very fired up to beat his old team. I think he will do his damnedest to scheme everything up to make sure he gets a win against his old team. I'll definitely take the Giants.
Pulling out all the stops, as it were.
Right.
I picked these two games because I think there's a fair, not a great chance, but there's a fair chance that either of these games could be an upset. I would say the more likely, I'm not sure I think either is going to happen. The more likely one to me is Denver beating Buffalo. And I'll say the reason is something that wasn't mentioned, which is Buffalo's kind of, their defense's Achilles heel has kind of been the run game. The fact that they, didn't give much up to the Steelers is more of an indictment about the Steelers' run game and not really about Buffalo's defense. Yeah. Denver's rushing game is pretty good. They got a few guys there that can hurt you, and they can rotate the men and keep them fresh against you. And their defense, I think, at home has been pretty good against some good teams. So I'll give Denver a slight chance. I like Denver to cover, and I keep my fingers crossed. Maybe for a win there. If you can sneak out a win with Denver there, that definitely helps the Steelers' chances going forward in terms of their playoff seeding and them being able to rest players when it comes down to that last weekend of the year. That does it for our abbreviated around the league pick segment tonight. We're going to go straight to our 5-star matchup, which is a 5-star matchup because the Steelers are in it. Clearly not a 5-star matchup because the Bengals are in it. They are in not even B movie territory. They're in a C movie. They're in straight to video territory. So I think we got to pick some scores for this game. I don't know, Jeremy, I'll start with you. Is it a get-right game for the Steelers where they're going to blow out Cincy? How do you see this happening?
Well, every time I've predicted a blowout, it's been absolutely the other story. So I'm going to have to play a little more conservative. I think it's going to look something more like 23-10. I feel like they get enough done offensively, but not going to be like a big blown out game. I think it'll be more just due to Cincinnati's deficiencies that they're not putting more points up on the board.
Sure. Perch, how about you?
I'm going 25-12, and I'll pretty much echo what he just said. I think the defense will have their way keeping Cincinnati down, probably force a turnover. The offense will do just enough to put up enough points to make it look respectable, but I don't think the Steelers go and blow them out. Up and down the field and light up the scoreboard. They'll win by a couple scores, but nothing too impressive.
And FC, how about you?
30-6 Steelers, 2 offensive touchdowns, 3 field goals, 1 defensive touchdown. I think that they start showing signs of life and what to expect from the offense heading forward into the playoffs.
I don't know. I started when the moment that the gun sounded on the Steelers Buffalo, I had a thought pop into my head for Steelers Bengals that was 20-10. But I thought Dotson wasn't going to play. I thought they wouldn't really have any guards. So I'm kind of inclined to think that Dotson plays this week. And especially with the absence of Geno Atkins in the middle, that the Steelers were able to do a little bit to try to get some run game going. I'm gonna stretch it to 27-10 for the Steelers. I think you're going to see some pulling of the starters of the Steelers defense in the maybe the last third of this game. I hope that they can get themselves enough of a lead that they can get some depth guys in there and give their top defenders some time off, because I think they're going to need it coming up for the last 2 games that are coming into the playoffs. So yeah, I'll make it 27-10 Steelers. Not necessarily a super impressive win, but that's, in the NFL, 17 points is a huge win. and we all, ought to keep that in mind. Even with a really poor opponent and a really good team, it's rare to win by 17. So I guess I am in a way talking about a blowout. Final thoughts. I'll start with you, Jeremy.
Just please run the ball this week. Let's find something in the running game to give us some hope going forward. This is the team that we could do it against. I feel like that could get the ball rolling. Please run the ball, and please run it well.
FC, how about you?
I would advise Henri Mondu to get a haircut. These old senile referees do not like your long-haired hippie self. I think he's had 2 of the worst penalties called against him this year in the NFL.
Yeah, I think actually not only did he get penalties called on him, I think he got pulled by the face mask once on one of them and didn't get the face mask called, they called him for roughing or whatever. Yeah, so terrible. Perch, how about you? Final word.
Final word, I'll give you 2. First one, fire Fitchner, and second one, asshole, Juju. Quit disrespecting teams by dancing on their fucking logo. Be a little bit more mature than the average 11-year-old and, worry about playing a football game before a game instead of TikTok dancing. What the fuck's wrong with these kids these days? Get off my lawn.
And here's the best part. Juju, I think, is a really good kid. So it's funny. Like, I completely agree with you that it's just unnecessary. And if it causes you any kind of, trauma, not worth it. My final thought is just, when the season started, I was like, don't write off Jalen Samuels just yet. He's going to make this team because, he's a good special teamer and he offers something that the other guys don't offer, something a little bit different. And I was like, at some point before the year's out, everybody on the roster will figure out a way to contribute in a way where you're like, wow, like, there was a moment there where like we needed that guy. I kind of think this is the moment for Jalen Samuels. I feel like it's a moment where he can do a little bit of a lot of different things. He doesn't necessarily do any of them that great, but that versatility definitely helps where the Steelers are at right now and what they're trying to accomplish next and getting better, because when he's on the field, you have, a little bit of a threat of some things in the pass game that you don't have without him. And actually, I think he's been running okay. Like better than, more like his form of 2018 than his 2019 form. And right now, if Connor's not 100%, I have zero faith in Benny Snell, and Anthony McFarland is yet to really show. He had one game where he had some runs and looked good doing it, and the rest of the time he's been missing the holes and falling down and doing stuff that, I'm not a fan of as a running back. So I feel like this couple of weeks here would be the Jalen Samuels moment where you're like, okay, I'm glad he's on our team, and still hope he gets upgraded next year. Maybe. But that's my final word. Gentlemen, Jeremy Coleman there in Indianapolis, mourning his Indiana Hoosiers season. Perch in Pittsburgh with a sore back from digging out his driveway. And FC, who lost weight this week by A, shivering from the cold, and B, shaving his beard for good luck. Gentlemen, for all of you, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Great show tonight. Thank you to everyone who tuned in from both Steeler Fury and from the Twitter world and every place else that joins us on Spreaker and other places where you get your podcasts, YouTube. Join our Facebook group, and you'll get live videos every week from us doing this stupid show. And in the meantime, let's talk again next week after a fantastic Steeler victory. I am your host, Bradshaw DeBen, a.k.a. Will Massasack, a.k.a. Accidental Zen on Twitter, saying, go get 'em. Steelers.
Go Steelers.
Here we go. Let's go.
SteelerFury.com